Welcome back to Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. I'm personal financial planner, columnist, and financial therapist Rick Kahler. Research tells us that 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, not logically. For nearly 4 decades, I've been helping people make better money decisions. So what makes my financial worldview different from most financial experts? I blend the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Good money decisions are not just about the money. So let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back to another episode. And I'm with Deb Kaplan again, who's my co-author. We're working our way through Coupleship Inc., from financial conflict to financial intimacy. We're kind of laughing at ourselves because we get so caught up in what we're talking about. We're not blowing through this book very quickly.
I actually have to say, I believe this is because we enjoy working together, and the topics that we have written on that are in the book, we so really believe in from the perspective of your financial planning and my being a therapist and doing financial therapy, the two of us, that we really believe in how we can bring and help couples achieve that intimacy. And it's also fun working in this space together.
And it also can be that one of us is really old and has been dancing around these areas for a long time. And so we have a lot of war stories.
That we do. We do have war stories.
We're going to talk about compulsive gambling.
Is that what we're doing today? Okay.
We're doing gambling today. And I don't know, in opening this up, it's like a lot of things we've talked about. The question isn't whether gambling is right or wrong.
Very good point.
It isn't, the thing called the DSM-5, which I call the Bible of some
Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, number 5 edition of the American Psychological Association. Yes.
There you go. And why is the DSM-5 a thing, and why do many therapists and some psychologists just want to run as far as they can from it?
Well, that's another big topic, but you brought it into the conversation.
Here we go again. Another
gambling. I'm going to bring it back to gambling because gambling for some, and again, I want to reiterate what you said. This is not a plus or minus, it's a good or bad, or morally against or morally for. It's not even an opinion. Gambling, like any other behavior, can become impulsive or compulsive, addictive, can create distress and or stressors in someone's life. And that at the point in time when that is happening and the person is experiencing negative consequences, that's how we know there has become a bit of an issue. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong with gambling. There's nothing wrong with gaming, which is often grouped into this as well. We don't talk a lot about gaming in the book. We touch on it. It's an important piece to touch on. But the fact that gambling is, for many, a pursuit, a pastime, enjoyment, entertainment, and for some, it's a problem. It's an actual veritable diagnostic problem for them.
So as a financial advisor, I can certainly see how gambling can be super destructive financially. We know of stories, I think anybody listening to this knows of a story of somebody who was so addicted to gambling that it took food off the plate for their kids.
Yes.
And rent not being paid. And
yes, loss of dwelling, loss of house.
And debt, credit card debt, as they're borrowing because, hey, the next one I'll be able to win all this back.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty clear that that's a problem. And I think, I don't know, I was going to say that it's relatively identifiable, but I'm sure there's many people that just don't see it as a problem.
Yeah, the level that one has, a level of denial that one may be in when they are in their own system or don't allow for input from others, or others don't know. I could have a friend down the street who I see once a week or every other week. And, she might be gambling in her private time that I have no knowledge about. And again, it's about whether somebody's using the gambling as a way to self-medicate something. What are they avoiding or searching for? What is it they're hoping that this behavior will get them? What are they looking to? Is it a reward for depression? Is it get me out of my depressive mood? Any number of reasons. And that is something to be explored in financial therapy or in therapy.
So Deb, is this an addiction or an issue if it's not harming me financially? And I can almost, I'm thinking of a case, and it's almost like last episode we talked about if two people in the coupleship have the same behavior, they're both spenders or they're both savers, that things can appear to be really good. And I'm thinking of a financial planning client where they were both gamblers. They enjoyed it. They would go gamble every weekend. I could not see from a financial standpoint that this was harming them. They had it in their budget.
So they budgeted for what they would spend when they were gambling.
Yes.
Very responsible.
And they spent a lot of time doing it.
That's very responsible.
Yes. And I'm thinking of the end of the story of this particular story, that they both became aware of this in the financial planning that we're doing, because we do a lot of interior intake, psychological intake, and they both decided to end it, to end the gambling.
Why? If it wasn't a problem, they budgeted for the money and they were being responsible in their engagement.
They decided that, this money could actually be going to better things than continual entertainment, that there's other things we could fund. There's better uses of it, because it does feel that it's out of control, even though we're both engaged in it. And it could be, I doubt when they went and gambled that they were both sitting at the same table and whatnot. One may have liked slots, the other one may have liked blackjack. So it still wouldn't necessarily be connecting over it.
But isn't that interesting? They both collectively or with the other's influence came to the conclusion that our money could be better spent doing something else.
Yeah. And they decided to do this on their own. I remember having a session with them, and I was kind of going through some stuff, and they said, oh yeah, we're not gambling anymore. This is nothing that I did. There is no guidance or
intervention
on my part whatsoever. And I was like, wow, tell me that story. And I wish I would have recorded the specifics of it. So I think that this can go to, all right, Deb. Oh, yeah, okay. For example, I love to gamble on the Final Four, the men's Final Four. Mm-hmm. I fill out the card. Whenever I have time, which is less and less, I would get on some statistical sites. I'd look at all the statistics of the team and the probabilities. Kind of sounds like picking a mutual fund, doesn't it?
No, I think it sounds more fun.
And I'll have my cards going, and I'll get in a pool. And I've won a number of times.
How'd you do this year?
Huh?
How did you do this year?
Oh, my God. It was terrible.
Good thing you enjoy it.
Every team I picked to be in the Final Four, out. Yeah. And this particular one was the highest seed was a 4th seed, first time in history.
Yeah, correct.
Anyway, I'm not that good, obviously. So is that wrong?
I don't think it's an opinion of whether we would deem as a professional wrong or right. The person has to come to some sort of recognition, either by those in their life or they themselves, if they're worried or they think, because there are those people who are so really mindful. I don't want to become they're very anxious. So they become overly mindful of, is this a problem? And what in those cases is important to remember is, am I spending time or money that I would rather be spending on something else? Is this a problem? Is this a preference? Nothing may be a problem about that behavior of gambling or Final Four for you. if you find, I get less enjoyment, I don't really care much about it. I could take it or leave it. And I'd rather in the end spend my money elsewhere, or in this way, time, because time is money. I'd rather take my time and put it to a different endeavor. Then I'd say you're coming to a conclusion that the payoff, the reward of the time spent, it really isn't all that inviting. And so I can't say it sounds like it's a problem so much as you're really just questioning, do I like doing this anymore?
Yeah, exactly. When I apply my filter of, well, am I in pain? Is there something that I'm trying to cover up? No, this is a once a year thing. Two, I took a strengths finders test. Are you familiar with that evaluation?
No.
I don't use it much. I give out like 6 evaluations when I'm looking for someone. I don't use that one. And I remember when I took it, my number one strength was competitive.
What?
Yes. And honestly, I felt so much shame about that.
Why were you surprised that it's competitive, and that are you feel shame that you didn't know it?
Look, there's a part of me going, our number one strength is being competitive. How is that a strength? That's more of a problem.
I don't know. I think we're getting off of gambling, but just because I'm intrigued, I see it as a way to advocate for yourself.
Well, now I like that.
And that's a protector part that's advocating for the exiled pain of not being seen or witnessed.
And in Enneagram speak, which we haven't even spoken about, but some listening will know that's there's 3 instincts: self-protection, I'll say protecting, that's wrong. Sexual and social. Self-preservation, that's it. Self-preservation, sexual, and social. Those are the 3 instincts we all have, but one is dominant and one is non-dominant, or is weak. One is okay.
Sure.
And I'm self-preservation, right?
But I see that competitiveness as a way to advocate for yourself.
And it's fun. Yeah, I can go into all sorts of stuff on this. So for me, it was fun. And the Final 4 stuff involves research and analysis.
And that you love.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
So, and
what if you did this, however, every weekend?
Well, let me tell you the war story about my mentor, George Chell. He and I were the first CFPs in South Dakota.
Would he want the story told?
Yes, I think so. Because it's a story of health.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
He was a gambler. Blackjack was his thing. And he and his wife would go up to Deadwood often, maybe not every weekend, but often. And they'd eat out, and she played the slots and he played blackjack, only blackjack. He had it down, man, because at blackjack, if you play every hand right, you have a 49% chance of winning, meaning you have a 51% chance of losing. So over time, you will lose. And he would be so aware of the cards in the hands. When he hit losing, probably, I think 40 was about his max. Done.
$40.
Oh, 40K.
I was like, how many zeros are in this 40?
It could, there's some people where that would be reasonable. No, $40.
Okay, so he's
time. He's done. He took me gambling in Las Vegas once. He went in, we were up a little. We went to another one, we were up a little. We hit $40. He says, we're done. Let's go do something else. And it was entertainment. It was entertainment to him, 100%. And it was done with this financial awareness. It was very clear to him this was entertainment. I can spend $40 on a concert. I can spend $40 eating.
Right.
Which I can go into more war stories. He was not a connoisseur or a foodie. Or he could spend $40 enjoying playing blackjack. So I think the point is that, circling back to your original point, it's not that gambling is an issue. It's not that gambling is wrong. Compulsive, whether you're actually spending money or you're spending tokens in some computer game.
It's just tokens, which makes it harder because it's more
money
from the value.
It's kind of like compulsive shopping, right? So talk a little bit about gaming. Why in the world would gaming be an issue?
And gaming, by and large, for the majority of people, is not an issue. We want to really emphatically underscore that. There are those unfortunate few, as it begins to say in the big book of AA, there are those that will use gaming as an escape, similar to those who use shopping as an escape, working as an escape. There may be an avoidance of relationship, of life. And so the gaming itself is not a problem unless there is in-gaming gambling, because that has now become tied and that can become problematic for some. And there are other neurobiologic reward circuitry and dopamine going on here and adrenaline and so forth. All of the neurobiology aside, that this isn't by and large a problem. But if I find that I'm gaming and spending hours into the night, that I'm not sleeping, I'm impaired when I get up in the morning because I'm exhausted and behind the 8 ball of sleep, and I'm not functioning well in my day job, that I'm not showing up for those in my life, I'm preoccupied, I become a little bit more obsessive around, I want to get back to that game that I'm doing, or that raid that I'm having, or this project that I'm involved in. And if I start really removing myself from those and in my life and the things that I do that bring me pleasure, because there's an overabundance or an out balance of game versus life, now it becomes a bit more of a problem. And again, not for me or you or anyone else to decide, but that person may start experiencing negative consequences.
Yeah, you kind of took away my defensive. Well, but I'm doing it with people. I'm enjoying the connection with the people online. But to your point, if it's hurting, if my employer is giving me feedback,
But I want to bring up a point and add to what you just said that I just thought of. I was countering. I was going to do a devil's advocate to your, if I'm not taking away from other people. And I'm thinking of those individuals who have wonderful friends and get together in game. And they don't possibly have an ability to see each other because they live in different cities, live too far away. And I can hear someone say, well, Deb, how is that a problem? Why is that even a problem? And none of this is a problem. If one is not in a relationship, and certainly they could spend 24/7, 365 gaming to no detriment, except there's one issue. Are they isolating? Are they removing themselves from interacting with the world? Will there be a very subtle shift for mood, depression, or anxiety? And so that isolation piece, becoming apart from the world that is in the real world, IRL versus online, that becomes perhaps a friction point at some point.
This is a huge issue in our society, and with especially younger people and teenagers, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're replacing the one-on-one relationship.
Person to person intact.
Yeah, huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, you want to move on and try and get in one more?
Yeah.
Have we covered that? This is another one. I hope we have time for this, because Rick needs therapy around this. It's called Hoarding. So to those of you that are reading this book that think, well, these are experts. These are people that have it all together. They don't have any problem.
I'm debating whether we cut this or not. This might be very enjoyable to leave in.
I still could cut it.
One of us would have to decide, or both of us would have to agree.
Well, listeners to this podcast, or my office hours, I've referred to this. Well, look at what's behind me.
It does not look out of control or hoarding. What are you referencing?
Well, there's no books there for a very technical. Well, yeah. I keep lots of stuff. Do you have
a hoarding problem, Rick? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we said I would talk about this. Okay. For those of you that have taken the KMBI-R at kind of the beginning of this.
And you want to remind the listener and viewer what
that's the Klontz Money Behavior Inventory
that they can find in our book.
Mm-hmm. It's in the book. It's in chapter 4, I believe. And
it'll kind of tell you, which behaviors you have that might be problematic. It's on page 37 to be exact. Well, you might think I score highest in workaholism.
I'm not going to smile. I'm going to take this
You
seriously.
would be wrong. You would be wrong. It's
Really?
hoarding is my number one. Yeah. Now, I don't think it's hoarding. I don't think under the DSM-5, I would be diagnosed as a hoarder.
So you don't meet the diagnostic criteria for a hoarding disorder?
I don't think so.
Okay. But yet you see...
walk around in my house, but I do keep things of sentimental value.
Okay. I still don't see a problem. What about that is problematic?
It may not be a problem. But in this, one of the questions in diagnosing this, is the bad word. I am so sorry. I feel emotionally attached to my possessions. Question number 8. Throwing something away makes me feel like I'm losing a part of myself.
Oh, so there's a strong emotional quality to that.
My living space is cluttered with things I don't use. Well, yeah, I don't use anything on that shelf behind me.
Okay.
I don't know that that's necessarily cluttered. My office staff would tell me yes.
It is clutter?
Oh, they want nothing on their walls. I think it's a generational thing. They're all half my age.
Okay. Well, hold on one second. Okay. I want to be sure that the listener or viewer is following along here. So if you cannot actually see this video cast and you're just listening, what I will describe for the listener is a very orderly bookcase behind Rick made of wood. He has some books up there represented by what he's written and or what we wrote together. He's got some statue knickknack type stuff and some pictures. And nowhere in this background would anyone ever accuse him of hoarding. Nowhere, no how. It's an orderly set of cabinets, shelves.
You hit on the issue, I think. And any listener to my podcast knows that I've done a ton of therapy and a ton of work.
Join the club.
That's your self-disclosure. And there is an emotional component. Why? Why when I look at what you can't see, this little dog?
Okay. Now you're touching on something that I absolutely have to underscore. Does that little one have a name?
Yes. This is Doggy Daddy.
This is Doggy Daddy. And how old do you feel when you connect to that?
God, how old I don't know when he came into my life, but it was probably, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old.
So in therapy, we refer to this as our inner child.
Yeah.
Part of our inner child. He's an externalization of your inner child. And when you connect to Doggy Daddy, how old do you feel in this moment?
Oh, man. What comes up is 6 years old.
Okay. And so your inner 6-year-old part or self, which we all have selves. I have a very active 5-year-old. It's like, no, I don't want to do this. I'm very emphatic and I can hear that just no, right? I could see it. I can feel it. If you're watching, you could see clearly I look like a 5-year-old when I do that. And that is a very healthy connection to a younger self. What I'm hearing you say is that your emotional connection to Doggy Daddy is different or perhaps connected to some of the emotional connection you feel to items in your house.
Yeah, it's like, this thing is not worth anything. A dime in a rummage sale, maybe, right?
Maybe.
It's the emotional attachment. Like, oh, yeah, if I sold that, threw it away, gave it away, those questions in that it feels like a part of myself.
Yeah,
or
you could no sooner throw away a basket of books that are tattered and torn and illegible, then you could cut off an arm and throw it away.
Yes. So this is on my list. My IFS therapist and I have a list for when things get boring, what we'll go to.
Oh, give me an hour of time together, and I think I'll have your issue really
Okay.
clarified.
So I'm going to be
Whoa.
hiring Deb.
I'm in. But this speaks to the point of what hoarding is about.
The emotional side of hoarding. I think it's really important to bring out.
I want to say something more, because before we move from this point, it's not just the emotional side, it's the emotional life that is attached to the item or items. It's much more significant. It's much more profound. And that grief and loss are very, very much an underlying issue.
Yes. And there's the exile.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Deb, we've almost managed to run out of time.
And we're just starting.
Closing thoughts on hoarding.
I would say that for many people, know hoarding through the programs they've seen on television, and or some serious consequences that they've experienced growing up in their own life. And there are those cases where it has become so absolutely clinically problematic. I mean, it is dangerous for some people. Those are very, very extreme cases.
Yes.
Your case that you're referencing is very emotionally distressing for you, and yet visibly not necessarily the case that anyone could look and say, oh, Rick's got a problem, but it is internally has become a stress point for you.
Yeah, it's a point of curiosity. Thank you, Deb, for being with me again, and we'll see everybody next time.
Been a pleasure. Bye, Rick.
Thanks for joining me, Rick Kahler, for another episode of Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. This is where I combine the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Remember, every financial behavior, whether it appears illogical to you or others, makes perfect sense when we understand the underlying beliefs, feelings, and thoughts. Sign up for my weekly blog at financialawakenings.com. I hope you'll join me again for our next episode.